Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And this is number 10 in Sounding the Shallows. 10 weeks since we started doing our Friday visits.
Yeah, it feels as though it ought to be a little celebration just for that, really. 10,
yes, 10th
maybe.
Anniversary. Yes, could be polystyrene, couldn't it?
Yes, something like that. Well, we've had quite a lot of comments and emails and messages, and some of them we'll come back to at another time, but there have been some that were to do with what we were talking about last week, because we were talking about the doldrums, and we talked a bit about depression, didn't we? We talked about the difficulties sometimes in moving forward, and how you need sometimes just a little bit of something to shine through the mountains of despair. Your poem was about the railings being painted blue, wasn't it? And so that was really encouraging to hear that for some people that's beginning to happen.
But I do think it was very interesting that an awful lot of the responses we've had this weekend previously show how complex living the Christian faith can be.
Yes.
It does get a bit simplistic sometimes, doesn't it? Anyway,
Well,
thank you so much
and the
for
other thing is,
all of those messages. We really, really
we
appreciate
really do.
them.
But
We
the
really
other
do.
thing is that having talked about being in the doldrums, having talked about not moving at all, I have to tell you that this week we've been quite busy, based on the fact that, it's been your birthday.
Yeah.
And the little community cafe that I help with has reopened.
Yep.
But more than that, we
Yes.
have had an anniversary.
We have. This weekend just gone, on the 1st, was the 50th anniversary of our marriage. And we're very fortunate that we're still together. We know lots of
Adrian.
people. No, I mean, we're very fortunate that we've been very, very good friends for 50 years. But we're very well aware that some people have had all sorts of problems, and we know it's not simple, for goodness sake. The only thing we can say, and we've said it enough times, so probably most of you already heard it, is that our little mantra for coping with problems is to stop in the middle of arguments for coffee, because we all know how the argument will end. We know the tune of it, and I'm not joking. I mean, sometimes we've forgotten what it was about before we get past the coffee break in the middle. We know life is difficult. We know relationships are difficult, but we have to say thank you to everybody, whatever, that we are still sitting here together after 50 years.
Yeah, I think that's true. You said about coffee. I think all the nights when we're too worried to sleep, tea plays a role as well. So plays a part as well. So coffee and tea. There has been confusion for people sometimes. One of the areas is that we often do sketches, don't we, trying to show that marriage is complicated and that ours isn't perfect. That's one of the areas. And the other is that you wrote a book called The Sacred Diary of Adrian Plass, in which you called your wife Anne, didn't you?
Well, I never thought anybody would be interested in the book.
No.
Anyway.
But it has caused some confusion, I have to tell you. The worst being somebody very gently saying to me, "Can I just ask you, has Anne died?" Well, that was a difficult one to explain away. But we are still together, and actually we managed to have a really lovely weekend, didn't we? So
yeah,
that was
the
brilliant.
whole family were here. It was really, really good. And, there's an awful lot of rubbish talked about Christian marriage. I can hear cheers going on in the virtual silence around us. I remember in particular, I'm not used to interrupting people when they say things in church, but I remember years and years ago, somebody said, "I just want to say that a marriage without Jesus is like a two-legged stool. It wobbles all over the place. But with Jesus, a three-legged stool, it never wobbles." Well, I would just like to meet one of those people who says it doesn't wobble. I remember on that occasion, I actually interrupted, and I said, "Hands up all those whose marriages have never wobbled." And one little liar at the back put that person's hand up, And it's simply, I know it wasn't true, but there we are. Everything wobbles, and we do our best to get through if we can.
Well, of course it does. And we also know, as you've already said, lots of marriages break up for all sorts of reasons. Relationships end. And of course that applies, we were thinking about shipmates and the fact that, because we got to keep this nautical thing going, and that, so let's say it another way, Adrian, you and I have been shipmates in our little boat for 50 years.
That sounds hideous. We are prisoners of our own stupid metaphor, aren't we?
Yeah, especially anybody who's heard our tales about rowing, they'll know that isn't a good place to be. But of course it applies to all sorts of situations, doesn't it? Who else are your shipmates? I mean, your family, for starters, and I know there's been some pretty cosy boats with a lot of shipmates in some families during this time. But work, they're your shipmates, and of course so is church.
Yes, that's
they
true.
are your shipmates.
Yes.
And of course the problem is that everyone's different, so different sometimes. And I learnt that about Adrian on our honeymoon. I think we may have mentioned before, we went camping on our honeymoon, and the first few days it was glorious sunshine, wasn't it? Absolutely amazing. And then it started to rain, and we were in this little tent in a very muddy, prickly field in Zena, and
It's
it
in
was
Cornwall.
pouring with rain.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was the morning, and I was cooking breakfast. And I was cooking breakfast over our little one thingy little calagas thing. And I was trying to fry some bacon. And because of the rain was dripping into the fat and spurting up into my face. And suddenly I heard this voice, and I looked round, and lying in the entrance to the tent was Adrian, blissfully happy with a book and a cup of tea, saying, "This is the nearest thing to heaven I can imagine."
And all you were doing was moaning about being out in the rain, having hot fat spatter all over your face. I really don't understand you.
No, but it was the beginning of realising just how very, very different we are.
Actually, what is interesting is, and I'd be interested to know if other couples have found this, that you kind of swap your extremes as you get older. I can't go into that now, but there are certain things that kind of move around. But anyway,
we'll argue about that
true.
later, Adrian,
we certainly
and have
will.
coffee in the middle.
We certainly will.
But it's interesting, the thing about church, isn't it? Because the point is that, I mean, we both always have a view, and that's what often causes the arguments.
No, we don't. Yes, we do.
But it applies in church as well. I'll just read you a couple of verses of something that we've begun working on about church and views. They're not a bad bunch in our church. I love lots of things that they do. But something prevents us from finding consensus, because everyone has their own view. We agree that there might be a God, but Terry has never been sure, and Joan thinks that Terry is halfway to hell, and Gordon thinks Joan is a bore. Mary thinks tongues is an obsolete gift, but Philippa uses it now, and Barry says Philippa's wrong in the head, and on Sunday they all had a row.
And if you want to hear more of that, you'll have to wait till we've written it. But we are in the process of putting it together. We really are.
Yeah. Here's the question. Is God a shipmate?
Yes, it's getting a bit kind of funny here, isn't it? I'm not sure if God is a shipmate exactly, a sort of yo-ho-ho, here we all are sharing the rum sort of character.
Well, one of the songs that we used to sing years ago sounded as though was, I don't know if anyone else knows it, but it goes something like, with Jesus in the boat, we can smile through the storm, smile through the storm. Well, you know what?
Oh, dear me.
I'm not at all sure that, I mean, we know Jesus' shipmates in the boat didn't smile through the storm. They got absolutely terrified.
I'm not sure we're supposed to follow their example, actually, if you don't mind me saying so. But
but the idea...
I certainly, God is not present in the sense that everyone's going to argue with me now, that a shipmate in a boat is present. That takes a lot more thinking about.
Of course it does.
And there are lots of things to say about that.
Yeah.
But there are some other things to say about marriage and faith. And one of them, I was reminded of a line from a Tennyson poem from years ago. I haven't thought about it for years, actually. And the line is ringing down the grooves of change, ringing down the grooves of change. Now, the funny thing about this is that Tennyson, I believe, was actually writing about the new railway lines, and he hadn't understood that they're not grooves, they're lines, they stick up above the earth. So he actually got it wrong. But it's been used as a metaphor for change, being possible for change to be something wonderful, even though it follows tracks that might appear as though they are confined.
Right.
So within marriage, for instance, or a long-term relationship of any kind, in fact, there are things that need to be attended to always within those lines. But change happens that changes the relationship, the journey, and just about every aspect of it. And in the church, the tension between, don't want to get too technical here, but between law and grace, where the law, if you like, is the lines, but grace is the thing that brings something new and really quite remarkable into the progress of people and groups and lives. So I probably expressed that badly, but there's something there, I think, to think about.
No, I think that's really interesting. I was thinking while you were saying that, one of the marriage lines when you get married is that you're marrying for better or for worse. And very often when you start a relationship with God, when you first discover this extraordinary thing, and you don't know much about it, but it all feels very exciting. I think for a lot of people, obviously for people who've always grown up with it and they kind of know it, it's perhaps not quite like that. But for a lot of people, it certainly was for me. I thought, this is incredible, this is amazing. And I think that I could have sung that song, actually, with Jesus in the boat, We Can Smile and Storm, because I thought everything's just going to be fine now. And of course, as you go through any relationship, you hit some really difficult bits. You can feel let down. And certainly I know lots of people, and I know I've experienced feeling, well, I don't know about this relationship with God. I don't know what that means. I don't seem to know him at the moment.
But there are some very good reflections, aren't there, of what we hope is the long-term constancy of the love of God. I have to say, I probably sing with what? How does it go on the original?
When Jesus in the boat,
with Jesus in the boat, I can hang on to the mast and hope to grim death that we're all going to survive. Rather like the disciples. But your parents, your mum, when your father developed dementia, and he was very ill, really, and she became a hero and looked after him. And her main task was to make sure he didn't make an idiot of himself. And she really loved him. And one day I was sitting in a hotel somewhere in the south, and there was a couple on the next table who reminded me of them. And it was then that I wrote this, and it's called Edward, My Love.
Oh, Edward, dear Edward, sweet light of my life, just spread out your napkin and pick up your knife. The stars shone through velvet like needles of light when you asked me to dance on the terrace that night. Oh, Edward, not croissants. Too flaky, my dear, and you're so good with toast. And there's marmalade here. Champagne and moonlight, lounge suit and lace, kisses and whispers, your hand on my face. Oh, darling, don't shout. No, you know it's not Ted. It's that nice man called Stephen who helps you to bed. Morning came flowing in silvery streams as my face touched the pillow. I danced in my dreams. I'll walk in front, dear. You're so strong and tall, I need you behind me in case I should fall. I promised that night, for good or for ill, to love you forever. And sweetheart, I will.
She was wonderful, wasn't she, your
She
mum?
was. But I think that's, we talk about this relationship. We talk about God being in the boat with us, if you like. But I think I've come to feel that, understand that constancy. That he stops me maybe from making a total fool of himself. He's with me when I'm as down as
Of yourself, I'm sure you're
confused. What did I say?
Of
Yourself.
himself.
Himself.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to say something.
I know you were.
And but I do think that.
Yeah.
I think I now understand my relationship with God as being something that I value so much, because he's never let me go despite whatever I've grumped about or tried to walk away.
I think it's even more different from what we normally say than that. I mean, I was 16 when I became a Christian, whatever that means, and you became a Christian
after I met you.
After you met me, so it's all my fault. But in one of the books I just wrote about, called The Shadow Doctor, one of the main characters is asked by this young man, Jack, what do you think about God, or what do you feel about God? And he says he's very lucky that after all the years he's lived, and he's in his late 60s or something, or early 70s, that he has a genuine fondness for God, which he can actually say truthfully. And these are the 4 lines he writes, he's written, that he reads to his friend. I have a fondness for God. It comes from all the years, the romance of relationship, the laughter and the tears, the madness and the mercy, disappointment and delight, hope and desolation in the tunnels of the night. Romance with the small r, romance of change and development and failure and getting up again and all that stuff, which has been important for me over all this time. Really.
And you've been thinking a lot about rhythms, haven't you, and patterns that kind of support us through relationships.
Well, I just thought it was interesting to briefly, things like first, last, first, greatly blessed, deeply troubled, the truth standing on its head. Chesterton, that's how Chesterton described paradox. He said a man is never so tall as when he bows, and when you read and listen to the words of Jesus, you find these wonderful patterns developing, and I think they're really very helpful to us.
And we can so easily think there's nothing new to learn in any relationship, can't we? Whether it's with friends, whether it's with people in church, people at work, as I said before, or relationships within marriage or deep friendships. But that idea of the unexpectedness is something we must never lose. And I mean, it's very easy to think I know exactly what you're going to say, and you know exactly what I'm going to say, and it's always a surprise when we discover we don't know at all. And we do that with God sometimes, don't we? Maybe we'll explore that a bit more another time.
There might be people listening who also have a history with God, like you do with someone you're never quite sure where you are with them. And I don't know if you want to echo these words or not, but I wrote these as a reflection of the times when I have been wanting to come back, if you like. I think I'm going back to the time I knew that you could be my friend. That time is long gone now. But as the years go by, the echo of that loss still sometimes makes me cry. And then I have no defense against attack. I need my friend. That's why I'm coming back. I think I'm coming back to a time when I could make it through the fear. Yes, there were shadows then, and I could barely see. But as the night closed in, you lit a path for me, and I need you now to light the homeward track. I'm on my way, if you will have me back. And I think I'm coming back to a time when I was open like a child. Back then, I knew days when for a little while I would close my eyes and I could almost see you smile. And I know now it's your smile that I lack. So catch me, please, because I'm coming back. Who knows where you are, all of you. We're not sure where we are.
No, but we'd love to hear from you if there's anything you want to tell us about where you're at, where God is with you, whether you feel he's close in the boat with you, whether you feel he's wherever you feel he is. It's a relationship that, Jude talks about us rescuing people from burning buildings because God wants them back, and because it's so important to be back safely with God. So bit serious we got, maybe.
Yeah, never mind. Never mind. We'll do something about that next week. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.